Oh, yeah. It's time for another one, Johnny McGonigal. The blue-white breakdown as we get deeper into February. A lot to talk about. It's a Tuesday. March is almost here. I'm Bob Flounders. Obviously, Johnny joins me. I think a lot of interesting things to talk to. I mean, March is going to be a really interesting month for Penn State's football program with the start of spring drills. There's going to be a lot with the scouting combine where Penn State's going to have hopefully 7 guys in it. But that's March. This is February. And I just think the last week or so has been kind of interesting. A lot of really quirky things. I don't know if quirky is the right word, but interesting things happening with Penn State football. I wanted to start with you, Johnny, and just get your reaction to it's not a surprise. Pat Kraft has talked about it for a while, but he wants to do something to kind of, extend the life of Beaver Stadium, right? It is maybe one of the most iconic venues, not just in college football, in sports in general. I mean, there's nothing quite like that experience. You know it well. But I think late last week there was an announcement that they are definitely committed to renovating it, and with an effort to get it up to speed. But also I think the long term plan is also they want it to be more than just the home of Penn State football. But I'm glad to see it. I think the alumni are probably pretty excited about it. What was your reaction to it? And I know it probably wasn't too big of a surprise.
No, Bob, I don't think it was a surprise. In terms of the direction that they are seemingly going, nothing is official yet. They still need approval on all these kind of things and proposals and all that stuff. But for them to come out with a statement from the president of the university to announce that they're going in the direction that they're going, which is that they're going to renovate Beaver Stadium and not tear it down and build a new. One, it makes sense. Two, it's kind of what I expected. I'm sure that's what you expected as well. And, I just go back to when we were talking to Pat Kraft. This was before the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
A few weeks before they went out to LA, and he was asked about Beaver Stadium, and he talked about the history and walking around not only the stadium pregame, but talking to fans and going throughout the tailgate lots. And we've done this before. Everyone who has ever been to Beaver Stadium before knows that feeling of everyone congregating around the stadium before the game, the tailgates, the atmosphere. And, for them to go ahead and build a new stadium, and it just never seemed like it was the right fit for the fan base, for the university, for the program. So, yeah, not surprised. But, this is something that is, I think in the press release they called it a multi-year journey ahead, and it's gonna be a while, because you don't renovate a building this old, frankly, overnight. It's not something that can get done in an off season. It's not something that can get done in 1 or 2 years. So this is going to be a drawn out thing. This is going to be a very deliberate and methodical process, and one that is still ongoing. But not surprised to see this is the direction that they're headed.
Yeah, and I thought you mentioned Pat Kraft and that news conference he had. I thought one of the things that if you really think about it, he made one of the points he made that I don't think a lot of the fan base considered. I know I didn't even consider it as, look, if you were going to move on from Beaver Stadium, and tear it down and construct a new stadium, you can't construct 100,000 seat stadium. Like, you just can't. It would never be the same. It was always going to be. You just can't do that. You can't get a building that big together. So if they ever were going to have to, if it ever got to the point where Beaver Stadium, was not really ready for, to kind of, stay there for a game. I mean, it just was not going to look anything like the old Beaver Stadium. So that's one of the reasons. Like, he pointed that out. I was like, you're right. Who in their right mind is going to construct that 100,000 seat stadium? So that, I think that's good news. I just have a question for you. So even once they get the ball rolling on this, everyone assumes hey, it'd be a great spot for, you could host more sporting events. It wouldn't just be Penn State football. But I think it would also be if they get it up to code and up to speed, it would be really a neat place to go see a concert if they did it right. And I know that would be probably something that would be up your alley, right? You wouldn't mind going up there to see a couple of your favorite groups. So how long do you think it will take? And if it ever became possible for you to take in a concert at Beaver Stadium, I think you would go.
Give me Taylor Swift at Beaver Stadium.
I was sort of asking your top 3
Yeah.
groups you would want to see at Beaver Stadium, but I didn't want to push the envelope.
Taylor Swift is up there. No, that thing would sell out quicker than any other concert she's done. No, they had the one concert there a few years ago. I think it was Blake Shelton.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that did, or I wasn't there for it, so I'm not sure how it all panned out. But I think the other thing too is, again, just making more use out of this stadium than 7 Saturdays, Caesar, 8, given the blue-white game as well.
Yeah.
More pressing than concerts or other sporting events, because I'm sure they would love to have a Winter Classic there. If you had Penn's Flyers, if you had, going back to when I was covering Penn State prior to leaving the beat a few years ago, every time we had an availability with Sandy Barber, I would be the one that would ask her, hey, any chance you get a soccer game in here? Because that'd be pretty cool. Seeing, I think it was Real Madrid and Manchester United had a game a while back at Michigan Stadium, and that was sold out and looked like a really cool atmosphere. So I've always wanted to see, hey, what would a U.S. men's national team game at Beaver Stadium look like, or whatever. But anyway, more pressing than that is the college football playoff, because the expansion is coming sooner than, maybe not sooner than people would think, but sooner than previously anticipated. The 2024 season is when it'll expand to 12 teams, and you're looking at on-campus games in the first round. And Penn State could very well be in a situation where they're hosting a college football playoff game in December, depending on how they work the schedule and everything. And is Beaver Stadium, up to that? Are they up to that standard? Are they able to do it with, something as simple as sewage? Is that possible? And, Pat Graff was asked about this. We mentioned him talking about, before the Rose Bowl, he was asked, and stated like, hey, this is not going to be an issue. Like, we will make sure that Beaver Stadium is ready for a potential playoff game in a couple of years. But that's what I feel like that is a driving factor in getting these discussions going. Pat Kraft coming in as AD and really getting after him and President Benaputi as well. Yeah. It feels like it's been a driving force of like, hey, this is a program that has proven that if there was a 12-team playoff over the last however many years, this would be a team that is in it. And we have to be prepared for that. And so I think that's the biggest thing, aside from just long-term, security, long-term stability of the building and keeping people coming to games, with attendance issues across the country. Penn State hasn't shown that as much, but yeah, the playoff is a driving factor in this.
Yeah, I was just going to say it could be, instead of 8 Penn State football availabilities with the blue-white game, it could be 9 or 10 in a couple of years. And I know the fan base would be stoked for that. But between like hockey, soccer, concerts, 10 Penn State football availabilities, that to me is definitely worth what they're doing right now. And I just think it was probably a long time overdue, a long time coming. I'm glad they're seeing this correctly with an eye towards it. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, but like you said it, Johnny, it's not going to be anything that's going to happen in the next, half of a year or a year and a half. It's going to take a little while, but at least the process has started. And the fact that Penn State came out with that statement means there's very little question they're going to get this done. So I think that's really good news if you're a Penn State football fan, and we'll just see how this plays out. But let's move along.
Bob, I am looking forward to a renovated press box.
I feel like every time one of us mentions the press box, I feel like the fans are like, "Who cares about?"
Oh yeah, no one cares. No one should care.
I just don't want to put any more gasoline on the Penn State football beat fire. But you're right. It would be nice. We'll see how that goes. But I just want to. I'm glad they're addressing it, because I do think trying to keep Beaver Stadium as it, the name Beaver Stadium and the venue as long as they possibly can. I just think that it's definitely a destination. I think as much as Penn State football, I think, and the fan base loves it. I think there are a lot of fans nationally that's on their bucket list if they ever get a chance to go to Beaver Stadium just to see it. It's just one of those things that you have this. It's like the third largest city, or one of the largest cities in Pennsylvania on a game day, between the overflow crowd that's tailgating people there. It's just, and it's in a very small area, and you see this thing, and it's just, you can't believe you're seeing it. So hopefully this gets off the ground quickly. But I'm glad they're doing it. Let's switch gears to just a couple of things before maybe we talk about a position group or two going into spring. But just get your take on. You wrote a story about it. The football season really hasn't ended yet. If you're a diehard, the XFL I think kicked off over the weekend. It always seems like there's a new iteration of it every year. God bless them for trying, but I didn't realize until I looked at your story. There's a lot of really talented former Penn State players in the XFL, and it actually surprised me that one or two of these guys aren't on NFL rosters. I thought they were that good, but there's a handful of guys that really were good Penn State players. They're not that old, that they're giving it their best shot at the XFL. What do you make of this? Is the one with The Rock, I think. Isn't The Rock the face of the XFL now? What do you make of the current group of Penn State players? And could you see one of them? I mean, I'm sure a couple of them might get invited to a camp, but do you think there's any chance, we can go through a couple names, any chance any of these guys might make their way back to an NFL team?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you're looking at these players and you're seeing some of these names and you're like, wow, it's kind of a reality check of how difficult it is to not only get the NFL, but more importantly to stick. And then you look at guys like a Nick Scott or a Grant Haley or Cam Brown, and you're thinking okay, these guys weren't drafted incredibly high, but for them to stick in the NFL, credit to them. And I do think that some of their former teammates who are in the XFL now will, they'll get a shot, whether it's in a camp or whatever. You look at a Michael Mennett, who was an all Big Ten center for Penn State, Exeter Township kid. And, look, he was drafted in the 7th round. Cardinals didn't work out, right? And, he has an opportunity now as a member of the Seattle Sea Dragons. I will say some of these names are just it feels like, I don't know, this might be showing my age, Bob, but playing backyard baseball or backyard football. And the Wombats, the Sea Dragons, some of these names are I kind of need their jersey. I kind of need all of these or hats or whatever. They sound like kind of double A, minor league teams, the Biscuits and all of them. Anyway, Sharif Miller is another one where on the roster for his team, he's listed as a safety, as a defensive back, which I think is, very interesting for a guy who may be a little undersized as a defensive end, but I thought he was a really good player for Penn State, 13 All Big Ten selection, and coming from Philly, I always thought that he played well. Robert Windsor as well, who retired medically after latching on with the Colts, and he announced that he had retired due to hip and groin injuries, but he's back now on the field. So it's a lot of redemption stories, a lot of guys who they had a shot in the league and weren't able to stick, but that's part of the reason why these leagues are popping up. Not only do people crave football and want football in February and March, but it's an opportunity for these guys to get back to the league and keep playing too, because a lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot of them, maybe some of them are just I have other job. I have something else I'm doing, but I just like playing football and I want to keep this dream alive and keep this, keep giving myself a shot here. So it's going to be intriguing to see if some of these guys get that.
Yeah, Johnny, I'm going to have to watch a game now that you just told me Sharif Miller is listed as a defensive back. I could see a linebacker maybe, but he was a long, lanky defensive end that, I think the Eagles took him in the 4th or 5th round. And I really thought, I thought maybe his best football was ahead of him. He's a Philadelphia kid through and through, but I don't know how much weight he had to lose to get the defensive back. I don't know if it's a misprint, but I'm definitely going to check out one of his games just to see that. Ellis Brooks is another guy that it was a really, really, that last year he had in 2021 at middle linebacker for Penn State. Just a really, really good player, a guy who paid his dues to get on the field at Penn State. He's another guy I think that interests me as well. But we'll see with the XFL. If it's a slow Sunday, I mean, I think that's when they're on. I'm definitely at least gonna try to watch some of those games. But we'll see. Let's go to the high school level real quick for Penn State fans. I think a lot of Penn State fans in their 20s, 30s, and 40s can really identify with a guy on the 2012 Penn State team, Michael Mauti, who is now reunited with one of his 2012 teammates at a Harrisburg area high school, Trinity. Jordan Hill, who was from Steelton, played at Steel High, then played at Penn State, won a Super Bowl ring with the Seattle Seahawks, is the head coach of the Trinity Shamrocks. And lo and behold, I think Michael Mowdy, he grew up in the South. No, actually, he might have.
Yeah, Louisiana.
South, but there's also some Long Island roots. Anyway, he is now going to be, I think, the assistant head coach or associate head coach at Trinity, which was not really known for football a couple years ago, but they're getting a lot better. I just think it's fascinating to see those. I want to see those two on the sidelines together because that would be appointment viewing for me.
Absolutely. And one little through line here too for the current Penn State football program, Michael Maudy is really involved in one of the NIL collectives that Penn State has, the Lions Legacy Club. And so I'm sure being in Harrisburg and not down in Louisiana, being closer to State College might help him out with that, and in terms of establishing that, and events and all these different kind of things that would go along with that. But no, it's cool to see, right? It's cool to see that two former teammates connect and stay connected, and to now be on the on the sidelines together. We'll have to go to a game, Bob. We'll have to show up a Friday night and see what's what. And but no, and for him, this is something that. Even when he was playing, obviously his leadership and everything that he brought to Penn State's program, especially in that the 2012 season, you could kind of see that he had coaching in his future if he wanted it, and he seemingly does. So, no, it's a cool story and one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Johnny, you're welcome. You're welcome to stay over in Harrisburg at my place. I'll take you back to Shady McGrady's after the game. We can have a good time. But I really do feel like, Fridays are usually a tough deal for us to kind of shake free before a game, especially if it's an early kick to get up to Penn State. But to see Trinity play with those two guys, it might have to happen because those are two fascinating players. That whole 2012 team I thought was really a tight knit group. I mean, just because all they went through, really a bonding experience not only for them but for the alumni, the fan base. They really did a tremendous job in just keeping Penn State football together at a very difficult time. Bill O'Brien coached the team. I just think it's neat that more than a decade later, you're seeing these guys still kind of be together. And it's not just those two. I'm sure that a lot of those guys are going to be lifelong friends. But yeah, the Trinity Shamrocks, that should be a pretty good coaching staff. And Penn State fans, if you're from the Harrisburg area, I think you should. I think you might want to check out one of their games. I mean, it's only about 90 minutes away from State College, so I would make the trip. But that's good news. Mowdy and Jordan Hill back together. Sign me up, Johnny. Let's move here on the Blue White Breakdown. Spring practice is probably less than a month away now. I don't know when they're going to announce it, but we have a pretty good idea. We looked at some position groups going into spring. One of the more interesting ones I wanted to talk to you about is, I think we talked about a couple of them recently. Let's talk about the linebackers. I don't think we talked about them yet. And boy, you look at that linebacker room, and it was only last off season that James said, we're not even really sure what we have when you look at all three linebacker spots. They had Curtis Jacobs coming back. They had moved Sutherland really from safety. He was going to kind of play in the box as well. They had two young players in the middle who had no playing experience really in Tyler Elsdon and Kobe King, Kalen King's twin brother. And, by the middle of October, it was like, whew, this is not a question mark anymore. This is a team strength. A lot of it had to do with a guy who wears number 11 at Penn State now, I think. But it also, there were a couple other players that really took some major strides, including a walk-on who I believe is now on scholarship.
Yeah, Bob, absolutely. Yeah, Dom DeLuca is one that, we sitting in the press box throughout the season last year. We're like, oh yeah, he's jumping out. He's making that play. I forget which game it was, but he had a pass breakup, and we're like, oh, Dom DeLuca showing up again. And really from week one until the end of the season, he was a factor on the defense and special teams, and so a deserving scholarship for him. But you look at what they bring back. It's DeLuca, it's Abdul Carter is a big one. Curtis Jacobs, for him to come back and not leave early for the NFL, I think is huge for this unit, for this team, this defense. Tyler Elsdon, Kobe King, and then you have Keon Wiley, Tyrese Mills as returners as well. And then the newcomers, Tony Rojas, Tamir Robinson, and Kavion Keys, who will be coming in and enrolling in the summer. The other two freshmen are already enrolled. They're already going through winter workouts and will be going through spring camp soon. And so I think it's an intriguing group because you lose Jonathan Sutherland, who was a leader on the defense and had a lot of experience. Jamari Button enters the portal. Charlie Catcher no longer there. So yeah, I think it's an interesting group because I think you really like what you have, especially in Abdul and Curtis. But I think Kobe King came on strong as the season went along in the middle, and so I think you like what you have in your first team, and then the second team. Though there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of snaps to be claimed and won and earned there. So we'll see how spring camp works out. It's a little one that it's like, okay, well, who's gonna be taking snaps if and when Abdul is off the field or when Curtis is off the field, because we don't expect them to leave the field much in 2023, barring injury or targeting suspension, as Abdul knows, from the first game, unfortunately. But yeah, I think the front three though that they have there, the first three is pretty good.
Yeah, and one of the January enrollees you mentioned, Rojas. I think one of the highest ranked players in James Franklin's class. You can never say never. We just mentioned a lot of guys, the talented guys that are coming back, but for now on, when you look at what Abdul was able to do when he didn't even hit the practice field until August, I just think that if a kid's got talent, even at the linebacker position, I think Penn State does a great job of accelerating their development, even in that first year. So a kid like Rojas who's going to take part in spring drills, Johnny, what do you like about his game, and is it possible? I mean, I would think is it possible he could carve out a top 6 role, even though we just listed at least 5 or 6 guys that are coming back, but he might be just that talented of a kid, right?
Yeah, I think he is. He was named the All-Met Player of the Year by the Washington Post down there. He was a two-way star. He was a stud running back as well as a linebacker. He has that intensity, that tenacity that I think you want in a Manny Diaz defense.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any shyness or any reservation to play another true freshman. We saw them do it with Abdul Carter, and they not only did they play him, but they realized, hey, this kid is really good, and we need to mold our defense, at least our linebacker group around him, because they had Curtis Jacobs play 2 positions to accommodate Abdul and get him on the field more and more as the season progressed. And so they've shown that willingness to play true freshmen, and I don't think that's going to go away, even with expectations going into the 2023 season higher than they were going into 2022. I still think they're going to play their freshmen, and I think they're talented enough, to play. I think Tamir Robinson is also just a super talented kid and, rangy and can get after the quarterback. We'll see what Kavion Keys has. I know that they were really happy to bring him into the fold after he was he's verbally committed to North Carolina. And so to get down into the Virginia area, recruiting him and getting him out of there, they got I think 4 of the top 6 Virginia recruits in this class. And, Tony Rojas is one of them. And so I would, also, anytime I say Tony Rojas, I think of Ted Lasso. Have you ever seen Ted Lasso, Bob? Yeah. Football is life. I think football is life for Tony Rojas. So I would expect him to get on the field early. I think he's a prime candidate to turn some heads in spring ball and get after it early.
Yeah, and just one more thing. What we're really talking about, Johnny, when we're talking about all these freshmen just improving in leaps and bounds in their very first year, maybe not necessarily even as January enrollees. Micah Parsons, obviously another true freshman who they started at middle linebacker. To me, I still get blown away by the fact that I understand why they did it, but he was originally at middle linebacker to start as a January enrollee. Then he moved him. I think they moved him to Will after that, and then, but the idea of him as a box linebacker to start his college career and to see what he has morphed into in just a very short time with the Cowboys. But what we're really talking about, Johnny, is as James Franklin and his assistants continue to just recruit at a higher level and bring a higher caliber athlete onto campus, the transition is a lot easier. I think when you're dealing with high 4-stars or potential 5 stars instead of low 4 stars or maybe 3 stars, you get them on campus and they come from a solid program, and if they enroll early in January and they get to rearrange their bodies physically, Penn State has a chance to get a longer look at them, and if they can simplify the scheme by the time the fall rolls around, I mean, absolutely, they're probably only going to be at Penn State for 3 years, 4 years tops. So why not get them out on the field?
Yeah, I think they made that pretty clear in 2022 with the way that they wanted to redshirt certain guys. I'm sure they would have loved to redshirt Drew Shelton. Yep. In an ideal world, Olu Fashanu doesn't get hurt. You get Shelton into 4 games and you keep his red shirt. I'm sure they would have loved to do that. That was a scenario where they had to play him and he was comfortable playing. But across the board, for the most part, if you're talented enough and you're coming to Penn State, you're going to have a chance to play. And I do think that it'll be harder in 2023 for true freshmen to break in because you had such success with the true freshmen last season that those guys will all be back and all be a key part in this resurgence into what they expect and hope for in this 2023 season. It's gonna be hard for Cameron Wallace and London Montgomery to see the field at running back, right? With Nick Singleton, Atron Allen already pretty established. But they've shown the willingness to do that, to play those guys early. And so, I think Tony Rojas is one to keep an eye on. Tamir Robinson, again, is another one as well. At linebacker, specifically, you've got a lot of talented DBs coming in, guys with flexibility, whether it's safety or corner. I think it's a good class and it's with a lot of talent. And you see the train going. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they get more high-end blue chip guys in the 2024 class as the willingness to play freshmen keeps paying off and keeps showing. You have that proof in the pudding, I think is pretty important.
All right. I think we're going to wrap up this blue-white breakdown. Johnny, I just got to tell you, though, as the stadium continues to be renovated and we get closer to what it's actually going to look like and maybe the potential for it to host concerts, I'm going to have this vision of you at a concert, maybe a Taylor Swift concert at Beaver Stadium. Let's say 2026, maybe 2027. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I would look forward to that. I know you would look forward to that. And hopefully the day is coming very quickly that Penn State will be known not only as a football mecca for the fan base, but also for a great place to go see a concert.
Yeah, and look, I would love to see Liverpool play a preseason friendly against whoever. I don't care. I went and saw them at Fenway Park.
Right.
They played Sevilla there, and that was really cool. So, soccer and football stadiums as one-offs work. I think, you've seen it again. You saw it at the Big House, and I think that was a really cool experience for everyone who was there. So, give me Liverpool and Beaver Stadium, and I will be a happy person.
Excellent.